Hello everyone. Today we're going to learn how to automate the application of a layout template against a spool file. The spool file we'll be working on today is actually in the following out queue. This is an out queue reserved for our branch in Mexico, and in here we'll just simply display the spool file. Okay, here it is. It's an invoice. You can't really tell, you can't see the spool file in entirety in this screen, so what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and go over to Compleo Layout and just kind of navigate over to the same out queue which I already have open. I'll just show you where that is over here. We have our iSeries connection, we got the out queue, and this is a layout template. This template here has already been designed. For those of you that don't know how or are not familiar with creating a Compleo Layout template, you can always go to our YouTube video. YouTube channel, I should say, and in here we have a training layout playlist, and you can learn a couple neat things with templates. There's a really simple video here. It's called the 5-minute layout template creation. You can check it out. It does in fact take 5 or less minutes to actually create a usable template. So anyway, I'm just going to go back over to my Compleo layout here, and I'm going to show you what this particular layout template does. So in this template, I'm missing my layout, well, my logo here. So I'm just going to simply go to the folder that contains that logo, just throw it on there. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff that you'll see in that video. I really don't want to focus too much on creating a template here because, again, we already have that video. All I want to do is show you what this template does, and then I'm going to show you how to automate the application of this template whenever you do get a spool file, or in this case an invoice, and obviously that invoice fits the same template, then you can apply it automatically. So what I'll do is I'm going to show you in here in my run mode what this particular template does. So this template creates a file, it's a PDF file, and the name of the file is the name or the number of the invoice or the invoice number, followed by the PC date time, the current time, and the date. Well, actually the date and the time. So that'll give us a unique naming convention. And within that, what we're doing is we're actually sending this over to our Compleo Archivor application. For lack of a better word, it's actually more of a portal. And in here, what we're doing is we're sending the following pieces of information, along with other file properties. We're actually sending over the document number, which I've tied to the invoice number. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go over to that website, to the Archivor site, which I already have open. And in here, I've got the simple search model. And inside of the simple search model, I've got these fields. I've got document number, file name, archiving date. If I do a search, you'll see all the documents that are currently sitting in here. And here you have the invoice number followed by the date, followed by the time that the file was created, which was what I was showing you in the layout template on how to create the unique naming convention. What I'm going to do is, notice right now we're actually at 45 documents. I'm going to go over to my layout template. I'm going to just basically run this template. Okay, I'm going to go back to Archivor, and I'll just do another search, and that is now set to 46. What I can do as well is I can basically go back to my navigator and apply the template to another spool file. Do it again. Go back to Archivor, do another search, and now we have 47 documents. So anyway, as we progress, we can create more and more documents, or we can apply this template to more and more documents. Okay, so that's the last one that I created here. We got the document number, you got this one here, you got this one there, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do now is, rather than applying this template manually, what I'll do is I'll show you how to automate it again in Compleo Supervisor. So what I'll do is I'll go to that application right now, which I should have open. And if it's not open at the bottom in the icon tray, you can always open it with the corresponding shortcut. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to my configurations. And in here, you obviously have to have a connection, the Compleo connector, and you set up the connection here. This is the system I'm working on now. And obviously you got your reference, you got your IP address, you got the user, so on and so forth. This is all pretty common knowledge, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. What I will focus on right now is I've got the ALCU, FACTURAS. This is the ALCU that we were working on earlier on the green screen, which is the container of this spool file. I'm going to back up a little bit here. And these are actually the spool files that are in that ALCU. And we saw those also in Compleo layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to Supervisor again. And I'm going to create what's called a scenario. So right click on New Scenario. And in a scenario you have, when you build this new scenario, you have the scenario manager that pops up. And in here what you want to do is you want to create a title for your scenario and a comment for what this particular procedure does. So as a title, something simple is just basically apply layout template. I'm actually going to say apply invoice layout template. And under comments, I'll just say apply template as soon as invoice appears in ALCU. That's just a comment. Under spool name, I'm going to double click this, and I'm just basically going to go back to layout and look at the properties of these spool files here. So here you've got the spool name, the file name, you got the jobs, the user, job number, etc., etc. You can also grab that from the green screen here, but I find it easier to work with layout in the columns here and figure out what that information is that we're being requested here. So all I'll do is actually go back and use the spool name, PYF. I'll just go ahead and use PYF as my indicator of the spool name. So PYF. And instead of having it equal, I'll just say contains PYF. So any spool file that arrives to this ALCU that contains PYF will be processed by this scenario. And obviously you've got other things you can check for. You've got the job name, username, form type, user data. One thing that's really popular that people usually apply, I guess a property to check for, is the spool text. In spool text, you can actually check for any kind of or any combination of text that actually resides within the content of the spool. And to make things a lot nicer or more efficient, you can actually search on a very specific page. So if you have a piece of information that's unique and it's in a very specific page, then you can indicate that there, and that would make things a lot more easy to process when you apply this scenario. So today we're not going to use this. We'll just basically use the spool name. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and tell Compleo Layout to apply the template that we just created, or that I just showed you, that applies the logo, you got the barcode, and all the good stuff that you have there. And you can do actually a combination of things. You can grab the spool file, put it on hold, put it on, release it if it's on hold. You can remove the spool file. So those of you that want to clean up your ALCUs every so often, you can actually perform that there as well. If you want to change the spool file ALCU, you can actually do that as well. Let's see what else is interesting here. You can create a simple PDF. You can print. You can send the spool file as is via email. You can run an IDF. So those of you that have Compleo Explorer and you want to apply templates or automate these IDFs or Compleo import formats, you can do that here as well. Old map form templates they're also respected here. XML, Compleo Reviewer, and so on and so forth. But today, again, I'm just going to go ahead and say run a Compleo Layout template. and all I'll do is say, go over to the folder that's got my templates. Okay, I'm going to use local file, and basically this guy here, simple invoice design, which is the template that I was showing you earlier. Click OK, actually open, click OK here, and click OK here. I don't need a password, so I just let everything the way it was. And after this file is created, or actually after this template is applied to my spool file, what I'll do is I'll just basically put it back on hold. Okay, and here we go. We've got our file, our scenario set up here. One thing I'll need to do is I'll need to activate this guy here. So click activate. So now we got the little play symbol going on. So now, how do you apply the process, or how does it know when to trigger? Right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my green screen, and what I'll do is I'll actually grab this guy here. I'll close out my template here. I'll save my modifications. Okay, and I've got my green screen over here on this side. And here you can see everything's a little snug, but you can see both screens. I'm going to go over to processes. Okay, and these are things that I had processed earlier on the right side. You got a lot of green, you got some red. So in Supervisor, you'll get these, well, your event viewer, and at the bottom, you'll have the corresponding processes that either, well, the logs of the events that transpired as your file was being processed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over here, and this file is in ready. What I'll do is not use this guy, but use a spool file that's on hold. So what I'll do is I'll just basically release it, hit 6, and then enter. And then here you can see the file getting processed. Okay, and it should be back on hold. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, release the last 5 or so. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do that last one as well. I'll hit enter. Okay, and those should be coming through up here. You can see they're actually going through. I'll go back to my green screen. I'll do an F5. And every one of these is now actually in ready status. It's mostly because I did, well, release them. One thing that I don't understand, and again, we're recording this live, is why they weren't put on hold as I had thought that I did or programmed. So I'm going to go back to my configurations. Okay, and I'm going to go back into my out queue here. And I'm going to check this guy out. And just actually based on conditions and actions, I should have 2 actions, and I don't. So what I'll do is I'll just simply grab this guy here, double click it. All right, and always hold the file. I'll click OK. I'll click OK here. All right, I'm going to go back to Compleo, and what I'll do is I'm going to grab all these guys here and just put them on hold. All right, enter. Okay, so they're all on hold. Compleo's not going to do anything right now. The spool file must be in ready status in order for Compleo Supervisor to grab it. So right now they're all on hold. Again, we'll simulate that our ERP created these spool files, and we can just simply do that straight on this green screen here. I'll just go ahead and release all these files. Hit enter. You can see on the left side that spool files are going right through. And as that's happening, I'm going to go over to Archivor and see if these files were in fact saved in here. Okay, so I'm going to go back and sort this. Well, use that one there. Okay, 1741. It is 5:41 p.m. right now, and this is the last file that was created. Okay, so that worked. So it's 5:41. What I want to do now is I'm going to go back to the green screen and do an F5. Make sure that everything's back on hold. Okay, so they're all on hold. What I want to do now is I just want to show you something that comes with Compleo Archivor, which is Compleo Console, and just a little neat feature of the Supervisor and the new, I guess the newest version of Supervisor, is that you can actually check the status of Compleo Supervisor, whether it's running or not, or you can actually turn it on if it's not on. You can check some processes, you can check some logs, you can check success messages or error messages or what have you. And if you ever have some processes that run at night and Supervisor is turned off for whatever reason at some point, you can always from home or from some remote site start the service so that it starts processing your files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Supervisor here, and I'm actually going to stop. So let's assume that somebody stopped the service. I'm going to stop it there, and somebody released or created new spool files. I'll go ahead and release all of these guys here. Okay, so you notice at the top left here the Supervisor is actually stopped, and I'll just go ahead and hit enter. Okay. Okay, so it took a couple seconds for Supervisor to actually stop. I'm going to do an F5 here just to make sure that my spool files are still on hold. Okay, it looks like it took about 3 of them with it right before I stopped it. So anyway, it didn't stop right away, but at least it stopped before it actually processed all of them. So let's say the Supervisor stopped in the middle of a process or something happened or someone turned it off. How do I turn it on remotely? Okay, so again, these files here, they're in ready status. They weren't processed. If they were processed, they would be on hold. So anyway, we know that Supervisor did not grab these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to I found this website online. It's called iPhone Simulator. And what I'll do is just log into here. I'll log into our remote site. I've got my username and password. This is Active Directory related. So I'll just, obviously, I have a user for my domain, so I can do that there. I can use that there. I'm going to log in. All right, let's expose the iPhone here. And I'll just simply go over to the Archivor here. In an Archivor, I've got my simple search model, as you saw earlier in the other version of Archivor, which is the main website for the desktop. In there, we saw our filter. I mean, here we also have document number, file name, archiving date. I'm not going to enter any of these things here. What I will do is I'll click on submit, just grab everything that it pops open. So in here we have the PDFs that we saw over in the main site for Archivor. Okay. So you can view your PDFs here. I won't click on here because it'll actually open Adobe, and that's not the way it's going to look on your iPhone or your mobile device or your Android. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and skip that here. What I will do is, though, I'll show you what I was talking about, which is how do I start Supervisor remotely. Again, if you're home or let's say off-site or on vacation or maybe, I don't know, somewhere on the beach or somewhere remote, and someone calls you and says, Supervisor needs to be started, can you start it? You can go ahead and do so at this point here. So we'll go to the Supervisor tab. Notice right now Supervisor is stopped. I'll click on it here. Okay, and in here is the log that I was talking to you about. If I click on successes here, okay, you can see that it processed these files here. The last one it processed was at 1743, so just kind of keep that in mind there. I'm going to actually back up, maybe check out some errors. Looks like it didn't go there. Well, let's look at any status, see if that works. Anyway, so everything is in here now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go back to Supervisor. Okay, and I'm going to go and try to restart it. So at the bottom here, I've got the Start button. Okay, so on the left side, you actually saw Supervisor is running. Okay, so we'll let it load. This will take about 30 to 60 seconds. I'm actually going to maximize this guy. Okay, and just gradually you'll see that the out keys are showing up on the left side. Okay, so now these say 5:47 p.m. I'll go back to Supervisor, actually the console on my mobile device here. All right, do a refresh. All right, so now it's running. So now I'll go over to successes. All right, and I see that's something processed at 17:47. Okay, so I grabbed a few documents. Okay, and that's how you would do it. So anyway, today what we've learned is we learned how to configure Supervisor to process or automate the application of a Compleo layout template against a spool file that contained a very specific name. And just to kind of review, we'll go back in here, we'll look at that scenario. And that scenario, again, the title is this. The comments are those there. And once you establish a lot of scenarios, it's going to be critical that you actually have some really good comments so that if something were to fail in your production or your reporting production system, you know exactly where to go to troubleshoot. So these are the titles, comments. We worked on the spool name. It contains this data. And we applied a layout template, and we also put the files on hold. So that's it for today. This is today's short video. Again, Supervisor applying a layout template. Thank you for your time.